Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys. You can find me down on the bottom on my social media contacts. And today we're talking about monopods. Why do I use them? And I'm also going to give you a comparison of 3 different monopod heads. And I'm going to show you the pros and cons of each. So stay tuned. So before I set up, I am going to get set up with a monopod and a tripod back here and talk about some of the difference between tripods and monopods. But this is going to focus on those monopods, and it's actually going to take 3 different style heads and compare them. And I'm going to give you the pros and cons of each when I get set up. Now, I do want to make a couple notes here. All 3 of these heads are gimbal style, but they're side mount. And there's a big difference between a side mount, which is show you on this one. This is the Wimberley that I'm going to get to in just a second, but the lens actually mounts in here and it tilts just up and down, right? So just like this. It is much different than the swing arm, which I don't have one here, but a swing arm has that kind of a traditional, and the lens will float back and forth like this. So when you want to go up or down, so the axis is still here, but now there's an arm attached to it that's swinging. And for the monopod, all of the ones I'm going to review, the axis is here and the camera mounts right to the axis. There's a couple things about that. You have to have a lens collar that will turn sideways. So I leave my lens collar loose all the time, but it does have to be able to turn sideways. If it can't, then the side mount won't work for you. And the other thing that I want to talk about is why this side mount versus either the swing arm, which I don't find necessary. I just think it's added mechanics that aren't required for the monopod. On a tripod, I think it is value added, and it's certainly something you could look at if you're shooting off a tripod. Tilt head, that's another option. Tilt head simply means that I showed you the side mount, the axis is here, and your lens is moving up and down. With a tilt head, the axis is here, and your lens sits on top and goes up and down this way. And the reason I don't like that is because often you either have to lock this or unlock it, and the friction control here is very tough. And if the lens is a little bit top heavy or back heavy, you're going to find that the whole thing just wants to flop forward or flop backwards. I didn't like to hike with it. I used it for about a year. I didn't like to hike with it, didn't like to shoot with it. I quickly went away from the tilt heads and to the side mount. And I've been shooting side mount off monopods for about 6 years now. All right, so I think that covers everything that I wanted to cover in the intro. I'm going to get set up back here and let's get to it. Okay, so I rearranged the office a little bit and we're going to start to talk about tripod. And it's going to be a very quick conversation on tripod because this isn't really what the purpose of this video is for. But I wanted to show you where I started with the tripod and monopod, why I've evolved to monopod, and then what I think the better systems are for shooting off of a monopod and the reasons what we do that. But let me start with the tripod. I shoot a little bit of landscape, a little bit of portrait. I shoot my garden, so it is nice to have a ball head. And when I originally got into photography and birds and I wanted to upgrade my gear, I wanted something that was really flexible. So something I could shoot off a monopod, shoot off a tripod, and I found one product that suited my needs, honestly, for the last, I'd say 6 years. I've used this product. It's Promedia Gear. I think they call this a Tomahawk. And what I would do when I was shooting for wildlife or birds, I would simply just slide this in, and they call this a side mount. So simply slide this in. Oh, let me loosen that up. There we go. Tighten it up, and you now have a gimbal. The traditional gimbal has a swing arm like this, little smoother, but the side mount for me was a lot more flexible. And since I didn't shoot off of the tripod for birds a lot, I didn't need something that I felt like, hey, let's spend $600-700 on a gimbal. So this allowed me to spend under $300 to get one gimbal that I could use on a tripod and then carry over to the monopod. And I'll show you that in a minute. Now, I think every wildlife photographer should have a tripod, but if you've watched any of my videos, you probably know that it is not, for me, the best option. And the reason is it just doesn't allow me portability. If I need to move or create angles or windows, I like to shoot in tight spaces. The tripod doesn't allow that. It also isn't great for hiking and shooting quick. So a bird drops down, you know, you've got the tripod on your shoulder to set it up real quick and get that shot, you're not going to do it. But with a monopod, often you can just plop it on the ground and be ready to go. So a lot of reasons I use monopod. I probably shoot 10% off the tripod and 90% off the monopod. I do use a tripod often for waterfowl if I'm set up in water, and sometimes for low flying subjects like owls or certain raptors, I may use a tripod as well. And if I was out doing something with mammals or large subjects, deer, elk, certainly I think a tripod would be totally appropriate. So probably even a better option, because there's a lot of standing around and waiting, not as much hiking, and certainly not the need to recompose quickly for fast moving subjects like birds. So this is what I've been doing for the last several years, and I did make a switch. So I'll show you what I switched to and what I've been playing around with. So I'm going to put the tripod over here, but let me show you why I chose this as the monopod setup. So this is my monopod. By the way, both the legs, monopod and tripod, are made by Faisal, not given to me or endorsed. So I do like their product. And you'll see that I just took it off there and put it on here in a matter of seconds. And that was one of the reasons I like this. It was versatility. I can pop this head either way, so I can invest a lower amount, get a very good quality. By the way, this is an excellent, well-made head, but I could get one basically to do two jobs. And now that I've been doing it for a while and I can afford to invest one on each, that's what I'm going to do. So this will now go to my tripod full-time, and the ball head or the sidekick will be the full-time setup on the tripod, and I've changed the head on my monopod. Okay, you're going to notice one thing. I'll try to get this in here that's different and interesting. This has an Arca Swiss plate here, which you can see there, and it also has one here. It is almost, I actually think it might be the only product made that is a side mount that does both. Wimberley makes a sidekick. There's a couple other vendors that make a sidekick. Typically, it just has this one vertical mount, not a horizontal mount. So this is actually very, very good for that. And it clamps on and off here. Now, you could also thread it right onto the monopod, and that's fine, because you don't need, with a monopod, the one thing you don't need is, you don't need this axis of rotation, because the monopod is the axis of rotation. So I'll show you that on another product in just a minute. So this is what I've been using for years. Now, why did I switch? Well, one, because I wanted just a dedicated head that I could put on here. Again, I shoot a lot of wildlife, and I can afford to do it, so I went ahead and just changed it. The other thing that happened once is this clamp, and this happened pretty recently, was not secured all the way. And as I got to my car and we're putting the camera away, it actually slipped, and my camera was still attached to it. So a very expensive lens, 400 to 2.8, it's a lot of money. So it made me rethink this. So I got two products here that I want to show you. So I'm going to unthread this one, and you'll see how quickly it is. I don't even have to pause the video for this. I'm just going to simply unthread this and show you the first product. And this is the Wimberley side mount. Now, a couple things you're going to notice. On my old system, it was off axis, meaning the camera did not rest completely on top here. It was off to the side. And I was very comfortable with that. I didn't need it to be here. I had no problem with that. The old head, you could see it there. It's not quite as off axis as the Wimberley. You can see the Wimberley's really far over, but it also, the old head actually had a nice handle. I used to use that as a handle all the time. So this is the Wimberley. Now the Wimberley, I have to make the monopod a little taller because you can see it's mounted flush on here. And I'm going to take this, see if I can do this with one hand. I've gotten pretty good at this over the years. Thread that on and just show you how this one works. So very simple. It is a very simple design. It is simply tension here and clamp here, Arca Swiss, and that's it. Now you can see that this is radically off center. It does give you the ability to do some interesting things. So if something jumped on the ground, you can go really, really, really low, just like my other one. And you can also go really, really, really high if something was overhead. Now, typically those aren't angles we like to shoot for birds, but very well made. This, I told you this one's under 300. I think this one goes for about 250. This one, not that much difference in price. $179 retail when I made this video. I'll put a link to this at the bottom so you can check it out. Very simple design, very smart of Wimberley to do this because there's a market for it and there aren't a lot of products for it. Now, my opinion, it's too much money. For what it is, it's a Wimberley product, so you're paying a little bit more because it's well constructed. The design is so basic and simple. So I think it's a little bit too expensive for what the design is, but in the marketplace, it's probably not that much in terms of price compared to what else is out there. Again, there's just not a lot out there, but I'm going to show you one more option in addition to this. Now, the benefits of this one, it does give you that full swing, and it is great to carry. So this rests, I'll try to show it to you there, real comfortably on my shoulder. The foam of the monopod is taking the weight on my shoulder, and then this actually just kind of pads on the back. It's really comfortable. The one thing I didn't like about this is when I carried it, this part used to dig into my shoulder. And actually, I would come home pretty well bruised and marked up after a long hike with that. So the biggest thing I would say is the comfort in hiking. And I know that's not a huge thing for everybody, but for me, that actually does make a difference. And it is very well made. The friction knob, there's not a lot of adjustment here in friction. It locks it, and then you get a little bit of turn, but you can see if it's even off a little bit. I don't have my battery grip on here, so it's a little bit front heavy, but not too bad. It's not nearly as smooth as the Promedia head is. The Promedia head, in terms of smoothness, is better. That was the best of the three that I'm going to show you. But this one, it does its job. Very simple, very basic. Wimberley, would I recommend it? Yes. I'll do a quick recap at the end on pros and cons of all three of these heads. I'm going to show you one more real quick. Let me put this down. And I wanted to find a budget option. So I showed you a $250 head. And again, I could just screw this right down if I wanted to. Now I'm going to show you, this was the least expensive one that I would trust. So it's made by a company called Novo. I'll put a link at the bottom so you don't have to worry about Googling it. And I'm just going to thread that right on there. Now, this one is designed as a side mount gimbal. You can see how tall it is because of this. So I'm going to have to lower this again. And it's got a friction knob here. So this does rotate. I told you don't need this because your axis is actually the monopod. So this, to me, if somebody could make this without this and save a couple bucks, it'd be ideal for monopod shooters. Now, you can see this one has an arm that comes off axis, and that's going to let me put the camera center mounted. So I'm going to try to do this again one-handed. Thread that in there. The Arca plate on this one was really nice. It mounts very securely. Now, you can see I'm center axis. I'm not off axis like I was in the other one. So if that is a deal breaker for you, you've got an option right here. This is a carbon fiber, very light. I'm going to put at the end a list of pros and cons, but this was the heaviest. The Wimberley and the Movo are about the same weight. The Wimberley is a little bit lighter, but because this is carbon fiber, it's actually very light. So, good action here. I can go down pretty far. You notice I can't go all the way down because it's center axis, and I can't go all the way up, but you're never going to need to go higher than that. When I lock it in, it locks for hiking, and then I can loosen the tension for this. So you can just see the great flexibility. And again, for monopod shooting, it is so versatile. If I'm shooting songbirds and they're moving, I can swivel. I always keep the collar loose, by the way, so I can rotate. So I can swivel and rotate either way. And if it's up above, you can even raise the whole thing up to shoot. If it's down below, you can quickly tilt it back and go low. So it's just super versatile, and for hiking, much easier. So this one, I'm going to lock it out real quick, put it on my shoulder, and you could see that it is very similar to the Wimberley. However, right here, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, it is going to dig into my shoulder just a little bit. Not as bad as my Promedia gear, but just a little bit. So a long hike, you might notice it. You could certainly also put a pad on here to soften that up. So the Wimberley I found to be the most comfortable for hiking. This was the second. Promedia gear was the third. I really like it. difference in price. This one was about $100. I actually caught it for $69.99. I think it might have been a discontinued price or a sale price, but for $70, really, I think the best value by far in the three. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down. I'll give you one last look at this one. I'm going to come back to the computer and just go through pros and cons for each of the three setups that I showed you today, and we'll see you there. Okay, so there's my comparison and my thoughts around each. You'll notice that I told you each one has some pros and cons. I'm actually going to stop and I'm going to list those pros and cons over here for you now. And what I did is I took each of the three and just rated them 1, 2, and 3 in a couple of categories around ease of use, flexibility, weight, and then I also added one for hikeability. I don't know if that's a word, but just the level of comfort that I had when I was hiking around with it. So I'll pop that up now. And as you look, you'll see over here where that came out. I also listed the retail prices as of this recording. I did want to make a note here. I did follow up with that Movo head, and it does look like it's discontinued. I'm going to try to, in the description of this video, put a substitute, something that I think could be similar if you're looking around. So I'll put a couple options down there for you. But price points are indicated there. I actually paid a little bit less for that Movo again because I think it was on sale or discontinued. But I'll put the original retail prices up there, and then as well as some of the pros and cons. You can see how they rated out for me. Now, which one do I buy? And I think we search for YouTube videos just to give us the answer, and I'll be done. But, you know, life isn't that easy. There's a lot of gray. So what I can tell you is I would recommend all three, depending on what your needs are. So if you want a product that is versatile, if you want something that you can put on a tripod and a monopod and go back and forth, and maybe just make one investment in a very well-built quality product, I think the Promedia Gear is really, really terrific. I've used it for years. I am out in the wild. I beat it up. I take it in the water. Waterfowl photography. I've used it for years. It takes a beating, and it's very, very smooth. So I would say it's the most versatile, in my opinion, the best made, and had the smoothest action. Now, I will tell you the smooth action thing, most of them, you know, they feel a little better or feel a little tighter sometimes, but for the most part, it makes zero difference in your photography. In fact, I think sometimes we get carried away with these very expensive gimbal heads. Really what you need is something that is structurally sound, and if weight is a concern, something that's light. They all do functionally the same thing after that. It is sometimes one's a little smoother than the other, but it makes almost zero impact on your actual photography. So don't get too carried away with that. Look at weight and build quality. I think those are the two main things you're looking for when you're looking for any head for any for wildlife photography. So Promedia Gear, most versatile, best made, probably the smoothest of the three. So the next one is that Wimberley side mount, and really, really liked this one. I love the simplicity about it. I think this one is about simple. If you're looking for something that is very lightweight and very easy to use, it's a great product. There's really not much out on the market that looks like it or behaves like it. And so Wimberley was really smart, I think, to get into the market here. And while their price point, I think, is a little high, it's a well-designed product. It does have a couple drawbacks. Or benefits, depending on how you look at it. It is off axis. It's going to take a little while to get used to that if you're not used to shooting off axis. For me, it wasn't that much of a transition because my Promedia head was already off axis. So it's off axis. That does allow you to tilt all the way down or all the way up. Not that you're normally going to be in that situation, but it's there. It's also extremely comfortable to hike with. And that was probably, it sounds odd, but that was the biggest advantage for me. I like it because it put almost no pressure on my shoulder. I didn't have any bruising after a long hike. So I really, really liked that Wimberley side mount. Now, the other thing that you have to consider with that is it's mounted almost flush onto the top of the monopod. So it's a little lower than the other ones because the other ones raise up. You just need to make sure your monopod is tall enough to reach your eye level, or maybe a little bit above, to have a little bit of a buffer room. You know, sometimes the monopod sits down below if you're on a little hill or something like that. So it's never a bad idea to have a few extra inches on the top of that monopod. And again, this Wimberley is going to sit a little lower than the others, but I don't think that's any detriment. And to me, being off axis wasn't a problem at all. So Wimberley, very simple, very well made. Cost about $179 at the time of this recording. And then that last one. This was, if for somebody that's value conscious, I think this is a pretty easy choice at $100. Now, again, I got it at $69.99. So, and I paid for this. None of the stuff was sent to me. So I think it's a good, really good price point for what you're going to get. Carbon fiber, took it out several times, didn't have any problems. So structurally, I didn't have any concerns with it. It didn't feel like it was weak. It felt like it supported the lens just fine. The clamp was actually very, very good. Didn't have as much control in the tension as certainly as the Promedia. I think the Promedia had the best control on tension. The other two were okay, not great. But again, really all you have to do is lock it down and unlock it. You don't need a whole lot of friction control when you're out in the field. So if you're value conscious, I think that Movo is a great choice for value. So versatility, Promedia Gear, I would say simplicity, and probably maybe the best overall, the Wimberley, just a really good combination. And if you're looking for something that's value, I honestly would endorse that Movo because I think it's a good product. So there you have all three. Nothing here paid for, nothing sponsored. So these are just honest opinions about products. Hope you find it helpful. Hope you also consider why I use a monopod. And maybe if you haven't tried it before, grab one. See if you can borrow from a friend. You'll notice that I stayed away from tilt heads in the video. I'm not a fan of those tilt heads. I've used them for years. Again, I think the best option are these side mount gimbals for monopods. So anyway, hope you found that helpful. I do also want to thank you for your ongoing support of the channel. I really have appreciated the last year of growth and making these videos for you. And I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.